Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join with my colleagues in the Majority Makers Caucus on this March 4, 2009. It's been 76 years since Franklin D. Roosevelt took his first oath of office. March 4, which was then past history when the president took office, March 4, 1933, and he said the only thing the American people have is fear itself. President Roosevelt took office after President Hoover, and Mr. Yarmouth discussed some things that were about the Detroit Lions, and you don't have to go back as far as the Detroit Lions. You can look to what the Republicans said about President Roosevelt's attempts to bring us out of the Depression, and they caused the Depression with President Hoover and Secretary of Treasury Morgenthau and that Congress, and President Roosevelt brought us out of the Depression. He created work programs that put money in the economy and put people to work. And he made a major difference. He transformed this American economy. Once again, the Republican responses are similar to what we saw pre-1933. They're similar to what we heard in 1993 when President Clinton was looking at bringing about a balanced budget, and the Republicans said that wouldn't work. And the Republicans have said many of the same things about this proposal, depending entirely on tax cuts, and entirely on the same type of issues and policies that have gotten us into the ditch that we're in now. The fact is, we need to move forward, and the leader of the Republican Party's philosophy is none other than Rush Limbaugh. And Rush Limbaugh has said he wants this American president to fail. Now, I can understand people wanting to have power for their party. But when you want a newly elected President of the United States with a tremendous majority vote and majority support in this country to fail, you are basically suggesting that the United States of America should fail. Because if President Obama fails in this most unusual time when economic crisis has gripped this country, we're in a recession that is in fact probably is a depression, but we've kept the linguistics at recession, you're suggesting that the American economy and the American government should fail. With the Republicans up here talking constantly against what President Obama has done and voting against it lockstep on the Recovery and Reinvestment Act, we see a party that's not only being negative, but is being, in my opinion, un-American. They've offered not new ideas, but negative thoughts to question anything that's being done. They offer only the old and failed tax cuts. We had the privilege today to listen to the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And he said, and I may quote, "But sometimes the reality is that defining moments of history come suddenly and without warning. And the task of leadership then is to define them, shape them, and move forward into the new world they demand. An economic hurricane has swept the world, creating a crisis of credit and of confidence." Credit and confidence. History has brought us now to a point where change is essential. We are summoned not just to manage our times, but to transform them. Our task is to rebuild prosperity and security in a wholly different economic world where competition is no longer local but global, and banks are no longer just national but international. What Prime Minister Brown said, and said so well, is besides the fact that we have to restore confidence, and that's what I hear from every economist that I talk to, is that's one of the problems right now is the American public needs to have confidence. We came out of the Great Depression. We've come out of smaller depressions, recessions, and we'll come out of this one. But we won't do it with naysayers saying that it won't happen and this plan will fail and not offering an alternative. And it's a worldwide problem. And what Prime Minister Brown said to us is basically his government and the governments of the world are doing the same thing that our government's doing, and doing it together in a united front. Stimulus packages, reforming banks, and making sure that we can go into a new economy and create jobs. The President's plans create new jobs by going into broadband and extending broadband into rural areas and inner cities to create jobs and give people access to the Internet. Seeing that health care costs are controlled, which is taking a larger and larger percentage of our budget and threatens American industry that has to bear those costs, while in most other countries where they have national health care, the government bears it and not the industry, and we're competing against foreign producers who don't have that as part of their cost of providing part of their costs. So it's a disadvantage that we have, and General Motors and Ford and Chrysler have that disadvantage. But we're trying to control health care costs, and we're trying to invest in education. We're putting more money into Pell Grants and giving people an opportunity to get better jobs, to compete on the world scale where it is global and not local for competition for jobs, investing more and more in science. And in the previous discussion to this hour, we heard the people on the Republican side talk about science. They talked about stem cells. We put over $10 billion in the National Institute of Health, and I was really pleased that happened. I'd offered an amendment to do something similar, and it was passed by Senator Harkin in the Senate side. That's going to be putting scientists to work, finding cures for the illnesses that they were talking about but refused to fund. Heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, AIDS, diabetes, Parkinson's. Those illnesses can be cured or treatments can be found if we give enough opportunity for scientists to do their studies. And the National Institute of Health is the organization from which those funds come. There have been so many falsehoods put out about this bill, and I'd like to share a few with the American public here, if I can see where I put my notes. One is, and I found this most interesting, the Republicans have claimed that under this bill, and many people probably have heard this, that each job will cost $275,000 per job. Paul Krugman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, called that a, quote, bogus charge. Quote, why is it bogus? Because it involves taking the cost of a plan that will extend over several years, creating millions of jobs each year, and dividing it by the jobs created in just one of those years. It is as if an opponent of the school lunch program were to take an estimate of the cost of that program over the next 5 years, then divide it by the number of lunches provided in just one of those years, and assert that the program was hugely wasteful because it cost $13 per lunch, while the actual cost of the lunch was $2.57. There have been so many false figures put out and accusations concerning different programs in the bill and the different economic plans that have been put forth by the Obama administration. We know from Larry Summers and others that stimulus monies needs to be timely, targeted, and temporary. And they voted against giving the people who are on the front lines, the Purple Hearts of this recession, more extended unemployment compensation. They voted against giving states monies for Medicaid when we know we're going to have more and more need for Medicaid because more people fall into that category and can't afford their health care. And they voted against extending people food stamps. And those monies, particularly food stamps and unemployment, are the most timely. Those people are in desperate need, targeted to those who will spend it immediately because they don't have resources otherwise, and temporary because it's a short-time amount of money that's expended, and those people will spend it immediately. They won't spend it on their condos and their vacation vistas that they might go to someplace else, but they'll spend it in their neighborhoods and their communities, and it'll be taxed, sales taxed immediately, and put money into state and local governments who need that money to provide law enforcement and other services. So, Mr. Yarmouth, my friend from Kentucky, and the other sophomores, majority makers I've joined here, I think we need to think about Franklin Roosevelt. And the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That was kind of what President Obama talked to us about in his State of the Union and what he was addressing us when he was sworn in. A confidence that this country is a great country, and this country and this government will overcome the obstacles that we face, though they be great, and we will be the greatest country on the face of the earth in the 21st century as we've been in the past. But we need to think in new ways. We need to invest in new sectors to provide new jobs and to give our people the resources and tools they need because we're a great people. And I think you can usually see history repeating itself, and you see it being repeated here with Franklin Roosevelt, that Congress, President Barack Obama, and this Congress. Thank you, sir.